Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Digital Nomad World weekly series. I'm Becky, and I'll be your host. And today we're going to talk about opening a co-living in Sibiu, Romania, with my guest, Johnny Ilca. Johnny, welcome to the show.
Hello, glad to be here.
I'm glad to have you because we're going to get into kind of a part two of an interview process. The first interview I did was with your wife, Bianca, and we talked about Sibiu itself as a city in Romania. And today we're going to talk more about your co living in general and what it's like to run a co living. So, really excited to talk with you.
Okay, yeah. Well, I'm super excited to let you know about my co-living journey. Um, there's a bit of history, so whenever you're ready, let me know.
Yeah. Well, first, I'd like to ask you about your background and how you got started with digital nomads and then what led you to decide to start a co living.
I'm glad you're starting off with this question because it's all related. Um, so I've been traveling since I was super young. My family was always into traveling, and I grew up like around Romanian family, around the Romanian heritage, and it's not a chance that I ended up here in Romania. But essentially, I grew up traveling, but at some point I did the traditional thing where I went to college, I got a job, and blah blah blah. But that job wasn't really good for me, or at least living in the US wasn't, because I had a very sedentary life. And so I ended up leaving that job because I had some like health problems from sitting too much. And um, I realized, okay, let me see what this digital nomad thing is all about. So I went to Thailand for 1 month, and well, as you can guess, that did not involve lots of sitting, and I didn't have those back problems like I did before. So when I came back to the US and I started sitting again, I started having those back problems again. And I said, no, I cannot have this. I need to go somewhere I can walk or where I don't need to rely on a car. Because I'm sure you're familiar with, how the US is just like suburbs. But moving into a walkable city like New York was too expensive. So being Romanian, I realized, okay, I'm just going to go to Romania because even the most expensive city is half the cost of living of Phoenix, Arizona, where I grew up. um, so that's kind of how I got my first taste of digital nomading. And I would consider myself more of a digital nomad after I left and went to Romania because at that point I started living remotely, like completely. I didn't have like a base or anything, and I was working completely online.
Were you seeking out always walkable cities? It sounds like you're really attracted to them. And I don't know if it's only because of the pain and the problems you were having, or if you've always been kind of drawn to them. But yeah, were you always kind of jumping from walkable city to walkable city?
Yeah. So that was my priority. Essentially, wherever I went, I was always looking to stay in not just a walkable city, but in a walkable neighborhood of a city. So I would use my analyst skills because that was my job back when I was working at Amazon. And I would analyze like, okay, which neighborhood is best for me? How far is it from the nearest park, from the nearest grocery store, et cetera, et cetera. And that's how I realized to understand like what was important to me when it comes to where I live in the city and ultimately where I open up a co-living space.
Why do you think it's so important to be in a walkable neighborhood? I mean, especially someone with this American background where suburbs were normal to you as a kid.
Well, it's just healthier. And I can personally tell you firsthand that I didn't like I experienced the benefits of not driving firsthand. Like I don't have that debilitating pain like I used to have. Like I literally couldn't function because I was sitting too much. But because I'm living in a city where I can walk, um, I I was able to just not have this problem. And the thing is that really intrigued me was that it wasn't like a sudden shift. Like the pain slowly kind of went away, and then I started having a better um lifestyle, I guess.
I do want to ask you something that, like, to me, it seems like an obvious question that can come out of this. Maybe also people who are not nomads yet may think about it. So, don't you still spend a lot of your days sitting doing work from your computer, no matter where you are? How is this new lifestyle and being nomadic so different from being at your desk or, working the hours you need to in the US?
So the difference here is that in the US, because everything is so far apart, there's this concept of compartmentalization. And when you go to work, you take your car and you go super far away to this giant square grid where it's just offices. If you want to go to the gym, you have to take your car and go to where the gym is. If you want to go home, you have to take your car and go to where your home is. If you want to hang out with friends, you have to take your car and go to where the car is, or where your friends are, or where they hang out. And this compartmentalization made it difficult to do things efficiently, let's say. And compared to a walkable neighborhood, like if I wanted to get exercise, first of all, it would take me 10, 15 minutes to walk to the nearest park. And the walk there is exercise. But once I'm in the park, there's also that option of getting exercise. But like, it only takes me 15 minutes. And even those 15 minutes is part of the exercise. And then if I come back from the park, then I'm going to be nice and like reinvigorated with energy. And I didn't have to put time aside to try to find and spend time with other friends because the place where I was living in, well, which was a co-living space, made it easy to find friends and hang out. So ultimately, my lifestyle was very efficient. And although I still had to sit a lot to work and all that sort of stuff, I essentially replaced driving with walking. And that shift made a huge difference for me. But on top of that, I started working more as a freelancer and less as an employee. And that made a big difference because as a full-time employee, for me at least, you have to sit there for 4 hours at a time, then you take a break, then you sit for another 4 hours. I mean, you can stand and take breaks and whatnot, but I can tell you in my experience that it's kind of frowned upon if you take frequent breaks and if you complain about your health and this and that. It's not really like approved. You have to look busy and all that sort of stuff, especially if you work in the office. But when I started working more as a freelancer, I had that flexibility where I had maybe some gaps in my schedule. And I would say, okay, well, I have an hour gap. I'll go to the park, do a little bit of walking, whatever, come back, and then I feel much better. So there's more flexibility because I became a freelancer, and there was more convenience because I lived in a place where I had my needs at a much shorter distance, so to say. I think what I like to compare it to, I studied supply chain management in college, and in supply chain management, there's this concept of like the startup cost and the teardown cost of like running a factory or whatever. And for me, I kind of applied this methodology to the things I need in my life, like exercise. And I was like, okay, what's the startup cost of getting my exercise and the teardown cost? And if I was living in the US, that would mean getting in my car, driving to the gym, going in the gym, and then finally exercising. That would be the startup cost. The teardown cost would be getting back in the car and then going home and showering and blah, blah, blah. When I compare that to my lifestyle that I have here, the startup cost is much shorter. It's literally me walking out the front door. So you see how
Yeah.
I reduced the logistical aspects of these kind of things.
Okay, so you were unfortunately born in a country that sounds like it just, as you got older, it just wasn't matching with your whole ethos of what you like to do. So getting on the road, you could find what you really liked and you could afford to live there much better and much more so than in the US. So how did this lead you eventually to opening a co-living? Because you mentioned you were living in a co-living before the one you have started. So what was that experience like and where were you in for that co-living?
Yeah, so I mean, if I go back to when I left the US, I initially arrived in Romania and did like a volunteer program for 1 month, and it was like in a small city, not far from Bucharest. And of course, I didn't have a car. Um, and after I finished that volunteer opportunity, I ended up going to Bucharest and staying in a hostel just to figure out what I wanted to do next in my life. And well, after a few days, there was like a board game night, and I met some people at this board game night that were living in this place nearby called the Hive. And I started asking them like, "Oh, how long have you been living here? What is it like?" They're like, "Oh, it's this big house. It has like 14 bedrooms, and you can stay here for 1 month, 2 months, doesn't matter." I was like, "Oh, perfect, just what I need," because it was hard to find something for a month or two with a decent amount of privacy, like a private bedroom. So I ended up going to the Hive, staying there, and the Hive essentially was a co-living space before the word co-living was popular. And this place was like, it was trying to be a co-living space, but it didn't really know what co-living was. And it started with a group of students who wanted to essentially have a better dorm experience. So they got some funds from like a school, like a college project, and then they were able to make like a little business, which a co-living space is a business, right? and it fulfilled their needs. But over time, this place kind of started falling apart. And while I was living there, like it got to the point where they wanted to close it down. And that's when I decided, okay, I'm gonna go make my own co-living space. And I was making plans, I was looking at places, and da 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 da. And out of nowhere, two people that were living there said, okay, we're gonna continue running this place as a co-living space. And so they became the new owners. They rebranded it, and now that co-living space in Bucharest is called Vine 21. But I still left, and I ended up going to another city in Romania called Cluj-Napoca. And that's when I started searching to open a co-living space. But I went down like the startup route, and I opened up like an MVP of a co-living space. So I found like a small, well, for an apartment, it was big. It was a 4-bedroom apartment, and it had 2 shared bathrooms, a big shared kitchen, common area, dining room type of thing, and a shared office. This shared office could have been another bedroom, but I decided to make it a shared office because in a co-living space, you need a place where you can actually get work done. And I know personally that working in the bedroom is difficult to stay focused at all times. It can be hard to remain productive. So I opened up that small co-living space in Cluj. I had that for about 3 years. And then, to be honest, I just kind of got sick and tired of living there in that specific neighborhood. And that was kind of the problem with this kind of structure. This co-living space was an MVP, but because it was an MVP, it was not necessarily sustainable in the long term because I couldn't afford to hire someone to continue running the co-living space. It wasn't really profitable. I had to do it on a larger scale. So I eventually just closed it down and started traveling more, doing digital nomad things. And my priority at that time was to stay in other co-living spaces and to meet digital nomads and kind of to see what's going on in this world when it comes to co-living and digital nomads. And over the course of these next few years, um, at this time I also ended up finding Bianca and getting married. And so we traveled around and we visited different cities. We reached out to different real estate agents, property owners. So we visited a ton of cities throughout Romania, like Timișoara, Arad, Brașov, Oradea, obviously Cluj as well. But we didn't really find anything suitable. So we continued staying in other co-living spaces and traveling around. And then like somewhat recently, after we stayed in a bunch of co-living spaces and experienced some of this digital nomad life, we were like, okay, let's open one and let's make sure that it's going to have the right criteria. So I sat down and started searching for like as a full-time job for like a whole month. I just started calling up property owners, real estate agents, and scheduling viewings. So for 1 month, I searched and searched and searched. And then I ended up finding this space here in Sibiu, Romania. And so we went to visit this space. It looked really good. And long story short, we opened it here in Sibiu.
Wow. Quite the journey that you went on, but I like how there was a lot of market research along the way. What about the space that you're sitting in now in Sibiu, which is Transylvanian Coliving, by the way? How did it meet the criteria that you were looking for?
Well, to be honest, the one thing that I really wanted, it didn't really meet, which was to have a park within a 15-minute walk, but it did have everything else.
You gotta
Which it
sometimes,
is,
yeah, make some compromises.
exactly, exactly. So we ended up finding this space, which the criteria we were looking for was for it to be between 8 to 15 bedrooms in size, um, for it to have shared spaces, so places where people can spend time together and get work done. Ideally, also a green space if possible, and for it to be in like a decently sized city, so you have like certain amenities. Initially, we wanted to open up in Bucharest, but then we found that the market in Bucharest is very competitive, and it'll be very difficult. And even though there's a lot of options out there that would be suitable for co-living space, it was essentially just out of our budget.
Yeah. The capital city, I'm not surprised.
Yeah, exactly. But I can tell you that it has like a strong market there, and it would definitely work. But maybe we'll open up later in Bucharest as we have success here in Sibiu.
Yeah. And I mean, I like this as a blueprint too. If people really have a passion for co-living, like, narrow it down, like you said, to exactly the criteria you want, and then go forward with it. And it might have to be your full-time job for a while until you find it. And make sure, I think also you have a partner in crime, whether it's a business partner or a life partner, helping you along the way. Because I think it's a lot for one person. I can't imagine.
Yeah, exactly. I'm glad you mentioned that, because when I opened my first co-living space, I decided to make it small because I didn't have a partner. Like I didn't have Bianca to help me with this. And I knew that opening up big space by myself was not was not going to be easy.
Yeah. So this green space that you mentioned, what is the green space that you have at Transylvanian Coliving?
So we have this huge garden in the back. I mean, although we don't have a park within a 15-minute walk, we have this beautiful garden in the back of our co-living space. We have like this well manicured garden. Whoever made it before us like really put some thought into it. And whenever we get people here that understand gardening, they always tell us like, "Who did your garden? This is amazing." So it's like having our own little park right outside the back.
Yeah. And what about the shared spaces? I'm always intrigued by those and how big they are and yeah, how many there are within the same building.
Yeah, so the building that we have here in Sibiu, it's a 13-bedroom space, and each bedroom has its own private bathroom. So you have like ensuite bathroom. And those bedrooms are all essentially on the second floor, or here in Europe they would call it the first floor and the second floor. Um, but on the ground floor and the basement, we have our shared spaces. So we have the co-working space. Um, I can't tell you exactly how many meters squared or anything, but it's really big, and we could accommodate for at least like 10, 15 people to work at the same time. And then on top of that, we also have a kitchen, uh, that residents can use when they want to cook. We also have that terrace that we mentioned outside with the garden and the basement. Right now, we don't really do much with the basement, but we're planning a Halloween party.
Okay. Yeah, having been there myself, I can say that I love how many shared spaces there are. Also, the co-working you mentioned, that there's a way where when you walk in, you can't see everyone and where they're sitting just from that entrance point. You can turn to your left and people can be hiding and working in a corner. So there's all these little nooks and crannies where you can get your privacy, but also not be stuck in your bedroom. I think that's a really important point for a lot of co-livings out there.
Yeah, I noticed that, we've been kind of experimenting with the furniture here, and I've been watching some feng shui videos as well to help with that. And I've been adjusting the furniture to give people a little bit of that privacy that you're mentioning, because I noticed some people prefer sitting in certain spots more than others. And since you've been here, I've already adjusted the furniture even more. So you can get like you can sit in one of those spots where you don't get distracted by other people walking by, and other people don't really ask for your attention. But on the other hand, you could also sit at one of those open tables where you can be more social if you want.
Yeah, and even going downstairs, you have like a large room with like a washer and a dryer, which for all the Europeans watching, it's really rare to have a dryer in Europe. Americans may not know this either. So I was shocked when I saw your dryer, but I also felt like I could get privacy doing my thing, doing my laundry away from all the other residents. So I think your space really offers a lot of like a great chance to be social, but also be on your own.
Yeah, exactly. Because when you enter the building from the front door, right to the right are the stairs to the bedrooms. And if you don't want to go in a co-working space or in the kitchen or in a terrace where that's where people hang out, you don't have to. You just go straight to your room. No problem.
And the sound barriers are really on point. Like when I stayed in the bedroom on the second floor, I didn't hear anything from the rest of the house, and I really felt like I could have my privacy. And I think you guys did really well finding a space. The way your space is laid out is a really functional place to stay for a long time, I think.
Yeah, that's the idea. And that's the big difference between like a hostel and a co-living space, really. Because the hostel is not designed for people to stay for a while. A co-living space is. So we take into account the needs of someone that would stay there for a while, which is difficult really to understand unless you're also part of that community. And that's why I took the time to do the digital nomad thing and also I also stay here, so I'm also a resident, and therefore I encounter all these issues first. And then if I encounter them again and again, they bother me more and more. So I have to do something about it.
Yeah, I think that's really great too. The fact that you guys both live there for now on site. And I'm sure there's always going to be someone that is a fluent Romanian speaker living with other people like this, and someone who's not working reception just like on a volunteer basis, not from the country, which you see in hostels sometimes. It's so important for fitting in to the city and just feeling like you're not alone in anything you have to try to get done.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, Sibiu itself is kind of used to having tourists because the city is fairly touristy. It has a very historical center. It's beautiful, really. It's like the most beautiful medieval town in Romania, in my opinion. And because of that, people are used to speaking English, German, um, other languages, but those are the most popular ones in this region. And here specifically, I want people to feel that sense of comfort where they can just express themselves in English and just have that, like, the home language, right? The language they speak at home. I know that a lot of digital nomads prefer for it to be English, especially when they're traveling, because that's the most recognized language. And I noticed this in Bansko, like the co-working space had this like bubble of English speakers in the co-working space. And when you kind of left this bubble and interacted with the local community, there weren't a lot of local Banskonians who spoke a good level of English. But here in Sibiu, one reason we chose Sibiu is because a lot of locals actually do speak English really well. And it's actually really fun to have locals come to our events and to host events in the city where we can also interact with locals.
This brings me to my next question. What kind of events are you having and holding at the co-working space? And how are you having the locals interact and trying to bring them into this co-working or co-living?
Mm-hmm. So the first and foremost, most important event that I host is board game nights because I love board games.
All right. Well,
And
that's a great way for people to connect.
it is really, and I honestly believe that connecting over a board game is allows you to connect in a unique way that it's hard to find really if you try to connect on a normal situation, because it's a game and you can kind of push each other for fun. But apart from that, we also host Spike Ball, which is like volleyball but smaller. It's a little version. I mean, Spike Ball is really fun. It's really fast paced and it's also really portable. So we have Spike Ball about once a week, and this is at the co-living space. Outside of the co-living space, we also have like networking opportunities like entrepreneurship and freelancers brunch. So we're organizing that sort of thing. And every once in a while, we also have spontaneous events, like maybe the residents say, hey, let's go to this place nearby and explore it for the day, or let's have a community dinner and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, the dinners. I love that about co-living because I don't always want to cook every meal for myself. And if I'm a little bit outside of a city, it feels like I have to, unless I have all of these friends with different cooking backgrounds and we can make it fun instead of making it a chore.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, even if you don't want to cook and the people you're living with don't want to cook, here in Sibiu, it's a city, so you can get food delivery. You can get like, there's a place right across the street which is called like Healthy Catering. I mean, it's healthy, um, and they have like lunch specials. So you have like the amenities of a city if you're a super busy person and you don't want to. Like for example, you can even get grocery delivery if you want. Like if you like cooking, you can get the groceries at least and save time on that. Um, so there's all these options available.
Yeah, and you're giving everybody. I think when I was there were mini fridges, but you get your own fridge. You don't have to necessarily share and label everything to be there for a long time. But yeah, there's really a way you can make it easy for yourself. And like, if you want to get a lot of work done, I also got the sense you could hunker down there and just remove all the cooking that you have to do, get food delivered, and focus because you've got that green
Yeah.
space keeping you calm. You've got the ability to have a social outlet if you need it to vary up the day, but then you can get back to your work. I personally love co-living spaces like that because when I travel from my home, one thing I love is leaving a lot of those responsibilities behind so I can focus on the main tasks at hand for myself.
Yeah, I think the change of environment is critical to this type of thing, and that's what we wanted to make sure that like once you arrive here, you can just plug in and get to work.
Yeah, and I talked with your wife Bianca about Sibiu and how the internet is very fast in general in Romania, but also in the co-living as well.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, also if you want to get like a cell phone data plan, cell phone plans here, you don't even need a plan. You just get by month. It's like less than €8 and you have like way too much. I don't even use all my data like ever.
Yeah, she mentioned there was an add-on of 100 gigabytes, and I think I get 5 gigabytes per month here in Portugal for 24 euros, if that is giving anybody some comparison. So it's incredible.
Yeah, Romania used to be the country with the fastest internet, but now I think South Korea is. So it's number two.
Not bad. Not bad at all. Uh, I do want to ask, sure, a question that people are thinking about as they're listening. How much does it cost to stay for a month in one of the standard bedrooms?
So right now we're offering a special deal. Since we're not very well established on the market, our prices are still very low. Okay. And so the price for 1 month right now, if you pre-book your stay, is $650 a month. If you want to book it right now, $750 a month. Or if you want to book 3 months, you can get it for $500 a month.
Oh wow! And I
If you
think
book if you book all 3 months, it'll be 1,500, which comes down to $500 a month.
do I have to stay 3 months consecutively to get that, or can I break up the months?
Yeah, so that's the deal, and that's why it's so cheap. You have to stay consecutively.
Okay, and I understand that 90 days is the maximum you could stay in Romania before you have to leave for 90 days.
Well, that's for Americans. I'm
I'm
lucky. I
thinking,
have
I'm
dual
thinking from that
citizenship.
perspective. Yeah, anyone who's not from the EU is basically, or the Schengen region, right?
Yeah, but we have that offer where you can stay for 1 month. We give the biggest discounts for people to stay 1 month, and as we get more and more full, we're also going to be raising our prices over time. So I want people to know that like these prices are not going to stay like this, and they're going to increase as the place gets more and more full.
Do you have any discounts for like a low season or a high season, or is that generally always the same for the price every month?
Yeah, I mean, we are offering discounts, and this kind of it's hard to it's like we use Airbnb a lot because they have the smart pricing feature. And the smart pricing feature really helps us because it takes into account this high seasonality, this low seasonality. And essentially that's how we accommodate for that. And if you book for a whole month, we want you to book for a whole month regardless of like the season, right? So that's why we're offering this super good deal, right? Coming next summer, I don't think this deal is going to be here. So we know that we're going into a lower season and we want people to hop on this great opportunity.
Fantastic. Yes, if I recall when I booked, you were using Airbnb for short-term bookings, but if you want to get the month or longer and get that deal you're talking about, you need to contact you directly. Is that right?
You can use Airbnb if you want. You still get some of the discount, but the prices, like I said, they are automatically adjusted. So if you go and try to book on Airbnb, it could be more. I don't know. But if you go and book directly through us, then you'll know that you got the best price, especially if you did the pre-booking offer.
Thank you for clarifying that. Okay, so I'm going to give you a chance to make a final pitch here, Johnny. Why should people go to Transylvanian Co-Living if you have to sum it up?
Yeah, so the reason why people should come to Transylvanian co-living is because ultimately a co-living space is about the community. And we're building the kind of community here that's authentic and the kind of community where people have that spirit of sharing experiences, sharing spaces, and together ultimately like that's how we create the best experience for everyone. And that's what we're trying to do. That's why I got into this business and that's why I am super enthusiastic about co-living because I want to enable people to live more enjoyable lives. And I mean, of course I want that as well, but through the process of me doing that, I'm also letting other people have that same benefit.
Fantastic. And thank you for creating this space because community, I think, is one of the most important things. And it's going to become more important the more attached to our phones we get.
Yeah, exactly. And well, with all this AI stuff that happened kind of recently, I honestly got scared of working more in the digital world, and I really wanted to prioritize more like the face-to-face interactions. And co-living, it facilitates that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Now, when you're online, you don't know if the person you're talking to is real. You could be, this could just be a bot that I've set up, John. You don't know. So there's nothing like being
Yeah,
right in front of someone playing a board game, like you said, that human connection.
exactly. Exactly.
Well,
I know because I do a lot of coaching online and it's a disconnected kind of interaction. Like for all you know, maybe I'm not wearing pants.
or if if you move your camera, they could be digital pants. It's like, what's real? What's real? All right. Well, thank you
Yeah.
so much for talking about this journey to starting Transylvanian Co-Living. And is there anything else you would like to share with us? Like if people want to follow you, where can they go?
Yeah, so if you want to discover Transylvanian Co-Living, just go to our website, Transylvanian Co-Living. You can find us on Instagram, on Facebook, on YouTube. Unfortunately, we're not on TikTok, but we're on pretty much everything else.
Great. Well, I wish you all the best of luck with the space, and I can't wait to visit again myself.
Yeah, thanks. It was a pleasure talking to you and being here.
Thank you. The pleasure as well on my side.